Hello everyone, we're really looking forward to this evening. We can see you all arriving at the moment, which is really super. So tonight is about talking with school business leaders who are going to be 10% braver, who are already 10% braver and who are going to be even more than 10% braver. "46 we're up to now, which is super. Hello to everybody joining us. We're just waiting for some more participants to join in, and then we'll be able to start. SBM Coventry has arrived. If you're having a look at the chat, hello. Use the chat to start connecting and saying hello to people while we're waiting. We will be recording this, so if people are still in a governor's meeting apparently, then we will be recording, so that's fine. Mrs. Knight has raised her hand. I can't see what. Can anybody see what that means? We're just welcoming some more participants before we start. We've got our courageous 10% braver school business leaders waiting to share their story with you. Hello from Northumberland. Oh, going to have some Northerners in the house. Yay. I'll give it another couple of minutes and then we'll start to kick off. That's all right, Mrs. Knight. You can raise your hand by accident, not a problem. Nothing's a problem. Right, I'm going to start us off formally, and as people come in, they can join in. So welcome to School Business Leaders for the very first collaborative event between Women Ed and SBL Connect. I'm Vivian Porritt, one of the strategic leaders. My colleague Kezia, another strategic leader, is here joining us. Hilary is going to kick us off in a moment, and then we have Abby, Suba, Sarah and Christine who are going to share their stories with you. So tonight is about being braver, and Hilary's going to explain and introduce that to us. Thank you very much, Hilary.
Thanks, Vivian, and thanks everyone for coming along tonight. It's really, really exciting for us to be part of this first event, joined up with SBL Connect and Women Ed, who are just goddesses and have inspired me and several others of my friends and colleagues to be 10% braver. And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to reach out to Women Ed, of all the other people that we could have reached out to support our event. Women Ed is a movement that picks up on so many of the themes that are vital for school business leaders. We're a female, predominantly female profession, but it also picks up a lot of the pay issues, the issues around equality, the expectations of working women. For many of us working term time only, that's a big issue, and being taken seriously as a woman leader and a leader of education. And on top of that, for us school business leaders, we've got that added issue of trying to be taken seriously as leaders in a world that is led by and for teachers. And that's, you know, that's entirely as it should be. But as someone who's trying to be taken seriously as a leader, or for those school business managers who aren't yet part of the senior leadership team, that's a really important discussion for us to be having. So I'm absolutely delighted that Women Ed are supporting us with that. The 10% braver call to arms is absolutely relevant to business managers and business leaders. We tend to be, and I don't like using the stereotype, but we do tend to be the back office worker and perhaps more introverted. And we really don't like pushing ourselves and putting ourselves forward. So being 10% braver can be a tiny thing, but it can mean a massive amount to an individual who's made that step. And having a community around you is vital for doing that. And our SBL Connect and SBL Twitter has created a community around itself of supportive professionals who all want everyone to succeed and do well. And it's a wonderful place. So I've been quite privileged in having been given an opportunity and a platform to be able to write articles and blog and bang on about the things that are important to me. And I realise that not everyone has that voice, and I'm sick of the sound of my own voice. So the opportunity to give other people a voice is a really important next step, I think, for our community. So this is an opportunity to start that. SBL Connect also tries to do that, and that's something that me and some other people are working on to try and encourage others to step forward. So I hope that this is the start of a really exciting part of our journey tonight, because one of the things I've realised over the last couple of years is that there isn't anyone coming to rescue us. It's up to us. It's up to us to make a change. It's up to us to make positive change about our workplaces, our settings and our profession. So if we do have an opportunity like this to come together with the much wider education sector movement, and for them to recognise the work that we do, then that progression is going to be so much easier. So tonight we're going to hear from some of our school business leaders about how they've been 10% braver, and I hope that hearing those stories will inspire you.
Thank you very much, Hilary. I know quite a bit more about Hilary than I knew a few months ago, don't I, Hilary? Because Hilary was 10% braver herself and stepped up and offered to write a chapter in our new book. More on that later. So it's been really lovely to get to know some of the issues for school business leaders around the being seen as leaders, first of all, as Hilary said, and being seen as then women leaders also. So I hope Women Ed tonight can be a real support. And I'm going to share my screen now and then take you through some of the issues that we'd like to explore with you. Or I would if I could find quite a lot, we think, and want to be able to unpick some of that. And also for people out there who might not know a lot about Women Ed, give you some information about us as well. Want to say a word of thanks to Lift Lessons, who are a wonderful entrepreneurial pair of women who were inspired by a Women Ed presentation to start their own company, and they wanted to pay that back to us by sponsoring the webinars that we couldn't have afforded to do. So it would be great if you're tweeting out there for us to just say a big thank you to Lift Lessons, and their Twitter name is there. So much appreciated. So there's the Women Ed mission. We're not going to make women be leaders, obviously, but if people want to choose leadership and want to choose to be a female leader, there are barriers in their way, without any doubt. And what we want to do is make sure that any female leader across education has that choice to progress. And we see the Women Ed movement as being about collectively all trying to get rid of those barriers that get in the way of women having as quick or as sustained a leadership journey that men have. all the barriers that men can seem to jump over on their way to the top. And we're a values-driven organisation, and those are our values. And tonight it's wonderful to be connecting with your community of school business leaders and to collaborate with that and to look at the challenges that face all of us, but the challenges in particular for school business leaders. And amongst everything we work on, those are our 4 focused campaigns. We are about leadership as Women-Ed. That's our focus. But we know there needs to be a pipeline of leaders. And it's one of the things I'd quite like us to think about this evening, because I hear people saying that they are school business managers or they're school business leaders. Personally, I think we need to sort that out. We need to sort the language out, because I'm an ex-English teacher and I think language influences ethos and culture. So one of the things I'd love people to do as a result of being 10% braver is go back and say, can we think about my job title moment, please? And also all of those same issues across our campaigns, they all intersect and work with each other as some of the barriers that stop women achieving what they are capable of doing or that they want to do. So I just brainstormed for myself some of the things that I thought maybe Women-Ed could do with and for school business leaders. We could support with confidence building. We've learned an awful lot of women about the nature of confidence and female leaders over the last 5 years and how to tackle it. And of course, 10% braver is part of that, isn't it? And that might involve tackling imposter syndrome. It's perfectionism on my part, but I think imposter syndrome and perfectionista are 2 ugly sisters, really, aren't they? What about negotiating? You'll be all brilliant at negotiating the best for your school and your students. I wonder if you're as expert at that when negotiating for things that you need, such as a change in title. We can support on what leading as a woman really means. We can support with applications and interviews, and of course, being 10% braver. But it would be great in the chat if you said other ways you thought we could support and help. And I've also launched a poll that would also ask you, what else could we all do to support in that way? So please, it would be great to do the poll and keep chatting, keep adding to the chat about, is there anything you'd add to that list? Or is there something you say, no, that's fine, we're good with that? Women-Ed is a volunteer organisation. We have now 30 networks in 19 countries, which is really bonkers, because all we wanted to do was give women a voice on Twitter. We would have been thrilled with that. But we've now got 30 global networks, all made up of volunteers, all working hard to support women in education. And they're a super group of people, and we're really, really proud of them. And there you can see where our networks are. They're obviously mostly grouped in the UK and Europe, but we go from Canada through to Australia. We have Middle East North Africa network. The little dot down below Argentina is the Falkland Islands, and our latest network to join us is Kazakhstan. So we know there are lots of discussions going on about new networks, and we want to be able to help women in education as close to where they live and work as possible. And that really means understanding their needs in that country, in that region, in that education system, because of course, there are significant differences. We've had a significant impact in lots and lots of ways, which is also really wonderful. In terms of reach, 33,700 followers. Amazing, absolutely brilliant. We have a blog, we have newsletters, we have over 130 network leaders. So many involved in global and regional events. We partner with the Department of Education in England on flexible working developments and diversity, and with COBIS globally. We were shortlisted for Outstanding Diversity Network in 2017, and our competitors were the Navy and the Governmental Department for Transport. So we had a lot of 10% braver that evening, but it really was phenomenal to be shortlisted for that. Really wanted to highlight our partnership with the National College of Education as well, the Women Only Leadership Masters, and it's brilliant that there are some school business leaders that have joined that programme. And that's a great way, I think it was Hilary you said, that's a great way to show the school business leaders are leading education. And we've published a book and about to publish a second one, and more about that later. But I think this is the key issue, isn't it? I love that woman and I love that quote. So I'm going to read it. Women belong in all places where decisions are being made. They especially belong in places where decisions that have got anything to do with women are being made. And that would be a great start, but they must be in all places where decisions are made. And of course, that brings us to the point that have school business leaders got a seat at the table? We've gone through whole versions of seat for table, haven't we? If you've read Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In, it's like saying, pull a chair up at the table then. Take a folding chair with you so you can join in. The one I like is, well, let's build a table then. Let's not try and join in the structures that are already there. Let's build a new table where we're all working towards equity in our profession of education, which isn't as equitable as it really should be, especially for women. I'm going to come back to that. So those are the key themes for 10% Braver in our minds that would be useful for us to talk about. I'm going to stop my share now. And we're going to move on to hear about other school business leaders. And I really like to be, I'm really pleased that 4 business leaders are going to be brave and share their stories. And I'll come back at the end and we'll pull some of this together. But a key question we're going to ask at the end is, as a result of tonight, how are you going to be 10% braver? So it would be brilliant to be having a think about that as your colleagues share their stories. So I'm going to hand over to Sarah Jones now, Sarah, and looking forward to your story. Hello, Sarah. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm absolutely delighted, thrilled and honoured to be here, and I can't believe that there are people actually listening to me voluntarily. It's quite humbling, really. I am Sarah Jones. Some of you will probably know me as Accidental SBM. And I'm here to talk about how I've kind of moved around in education and recently moved into secondary from a primary background. But I thought what would be helpful to start off with is to just say a bit about me, my journey, and how this has kind of happened. So I went to university and did a law French degree, planned on being a lawyer, as most people, if you do a law degree, do. And then at the end of it, decided I really didn't like the law that much. So I ended up working in consultancy in London, loved it, then did the classic women strategy. I got married and had kids and then didn't want to leave them. So I needed to find something that would work around my kids, and I knew that consultancy was not going to work because the hours were just unforgiving. So a little job came up in my son's nursery school, and I started doing that. And then from that, a job came up in the local infant school. So it was literally, I was stalking my children at this stage. They were delighted. And I started doing the dinners and being the lady on reception, and then did the CSBM, and then got a job in a junior school as business manager, which the school then went into special measures. The two were not linked, apparently. But I learned really fast about finance, HR, estates, all the things that we all do, we all take for granted. And from then I moved to a primary school. I then moved to a church school, and I did a MAT as well. So I got to know all the nuts and bolts of the primary sector. And I then started blogging and engaging with the bigger education sector, and realised that in fact I wanted more. The children were older, they needed me less. So I decided that in fact what I needed to do was move into secondary. Now, there aren't as many jobs that come up, so I had to start thinking about how I could do it. And I realised the first thing I had to do was actually look at myself, be 10% braver, and believe that I could make that move. I realised that I needed to shift my mindset to thinking it wasn't about me knowing it all going into a school business manager job in secondary, but to accept that I did understand how the structure worked, but I could also ask any question I needed to find the information to sort out all the issues, because they're the same. They're basically the same in primary and secondary school. So I started thinking, if I believe I can or I can't, I'm right. So I decided to believe that I could. The approach that I took to make the move was, I addressed the issue that I felt that I didn't know enough specific knowledge. So I knuckled down, understood all the areas that I did. Then I realised that I had managed in primary, so why would secondary be any different? So I then visited the school. I asked the school business manager what her thoughts were on the school, why was she leaving? And I looked around and I started to formulate my own plan about what I would do. I then did a lot of research into the school. I looked at Ofsted, I looked at the news, I looked at Twitter, and I built on that knowledge, looking at the information objectively. If I was looking at it for my own personal school at the time, what would that information tell me? So you build up a picture. I then asked my fellow professionals on Twitter, in the networks I knew, people that I knew, from school business leaders to head teachers to other members of SLT, what do you want your school business leader to give? What do you want them to know? What is it that you look for, and how do you want them to support you? What role are they playing in that team? And then I took that knowledge to the interview, to basically say, I have built a career from nothing. I can do it again in applying my knowledge. I might not know all the answers, but I know how to get it. And that, being as honest as I could about that, I think that was what helped me get the job, because you come at it from a new perspective. You already know, if you work as a school business leader, you know the big issues, you know it's about funding, you know it's about teacher recruitment and retention, you know what it is. So it is about belief, it is about knowing your stuff and making your presence felt. The thing that I would take away from the whole process, because I think I've done my time, is that the world of education is small, but everyone wants you to succeed. It's a really kind, supportive place. So believe yourself, believe that you can do it, and you will do it. That's my 10% braver. Believe yourself and you're okay. I'm done.
Thank you, Sarah. I love that. Believe yourself and you can do it. I think it's really fundamental, actually. That's what we've learned in the last 5 years. If you don't believe it yourself, why would anybody else? And when we don't believe it ourselves, it bleeds out in all of our pores in that way. I'm making a note as we go through some of the women-ed issues that we're going to pick up. And I'm going to frighten the life out of everyone else speaking by saying we have to try and avoid apologetic language. That's what we're going to work on this afternoon, this evening. So I'm not going to interrupt you as I would normally do. I'm not going to be that mean, but I'm making a note about the issues around apologetic language for us all. And they're serious issues. So we can be picking up things as we go through. Right, thank you very much, Sarah. Are we all set for our next colleague, Zuba? Are you all set?
Yes, I'm here.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And over to you, being 10% braver.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vivian. And thank you all for inviting me to speak today. Huge, huge thanks to SBL Twitter group, SBL Connect in particular, and SBM Coventry. What an opportunity. So when this invitation came to me about 10 days ago, I tried mind mapping what I would say. Such an amazing platform. I didn't want to miss this opportunity. Definitely something clever, interesting in order to impress all of you, to make you all laugh. I did map the image, but not quite the content. So not everything goes by plan. So I'm going to give it a go. My husband moved to this country in 2004. I'm from India. And 2004 to 2006, I was at peak of my career. I have a master's in business administration, and I was heading general operations of a training academy of a HR company in Chennai, my hometown. And the crossroads for me at that point was moving to London or taking up a job as a head of women's division in Times of India, Chennai. And of course, my 4-year-old, who is now 18-year-old, at that point in time, couldn't understand for the life of her why mom and dad are living apart in 2 different continents altogether. So of course, I took the decision, like Sarah just said, chose to take on the role as a mum, gave up my career. And so between 2007 to 2010, I did have my career break, had my second child. So I have an 18-year-old and 13-year-old, 2 girls. And during that break in career, of course, there have been many times when I have questioned the decision, that crossroad. Did I give up my Times of India job? What am I doing here in London? Did I make the right decision? Of course, you do question yourself, don't you? I did. A lot of introspection. But at every opportunity given, so even taking my child to the local primary school, I had a conversation with the head teacher and tried to understand how schooling here functions. It's not free in India, everyone pays. So here it's like, what an amazing opportunity for children to have access to education. So I was going into that, and I was trying to understand where the money was coming from for schools. So funding, now I understand, but not in 2007. And she said, there is an opportunity on the governing role. Why don't you apply? And I think co-opted governor was new in 2007, 2008. So I became a co-opted governor to the school, and I did link the current primary school. My daughter was studying is really, really popular. So through British Council grant, we could bring the teachers here and send the teachers from here to there. So that opportunity, I think the school community kind of came to know about me, and that networking helped, because to break ground in a new country with a master's degree, which is not really from a world-renowned university, still a university, was hard for me. And I got a job as a general operations manager for a care home. This was in Havering Council. A private organization took that gamble and gave me the job. I clearly remember Andy Burnham was the health secretary at that point of time, and he was against privatization of the care homes. But that opportunity, for 1 year, we grew from 33 incumbents, elderly care, to 90. We were in Rainham and in Upminster Havering Council. But Tories came, they won their elections, and austerity measures followed. And within 48 hours, all of us lost our jobs, and I was made redundant. And I knew I was devastated because I thought, here's an opportunity that I'm not going to let go in London. But, well, it was not meant to be. So the head teacher of the then head teacher of the primary school knew how devastated I was. And she said, there is a temp role available in school as a receptionist. You know, it's not general manager operations of a care home, but there's something to keep you going. So, well, I took that opportunity in 2012, and here I am in the same school as a school business manager, not a leader, not quite, as a manager. So when in that temp role, it was just a receptionist because one of the members of staff had gone for her hip surgery, and I created a new role because at that point of time, office saw only 3 members in the admin team, but I created a role for myself, grew after school club, school lettings. I think Sally Bowden, who is a part of the audience today, understands how much she and I really strongly feel about increasing school income. So I increased it from £3,000, which was in 2012, to 80,000 is where we closed last financial year. So it is a tremendous growth of school income. That's the potential we all have. And so 2015, I knew that my line manager then was going to retire. So I applied for diploma in school business management. I got my diploma. I understood the nitty-gritties of funding. I understood that school budget sheet, which comes every year in the month of February, March. And between 2015 to 2018, believe it or not, the school had 3 head teachers come in and go. So it was quite chaotic from a headship and leadership point of view. The office, which I ended up heading, had a full turnover of the admin team, stepping in, stepping out, resigning, hating me and hating the chaos, etc. But 2018 September, in came the current head teacher, and things settled. By then I had recruited all my new team. One of my team members is also part of the audience, Syra, thank you. And the full admin team came in, my job got reevaluated, and 2019 June, I became school business manager of First Farm Primary School. I also recognize that academization for most of the schools is a great reality. So I am trying to future-proof myself, and I have hence joined Level 7, SIPA. People should have warned, it is really hard. I love the finance, but accounting, oh boy, it is tough. But I am having members on Twitter who are supporting me and cheering me and keeping me 10% braver to attempt the role. I'm more an ops girl, so I'm struggling to wrap my head around accounts. What is really important about today and this opportunity to me personally for this journey is in 2006, before I moved to this country in May, in the month of March, a women's ed equivalent organization in Chennai invited me as an aspiring women business leader to talk in a huge conference. But after that, I gave that career up and I moved, and then there have always been personal doubts. You know, you're your own worst enemy most of the times. But so this is a turning point, I think. So I'm really, really grateful to all of you for giving me this opportunity. And this definitely is a 10% braver journey for me. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, super, wonderful. What an amazing story. And it shows the breadth and depth of issues, doesn't it, that women face in terms of having a career. But I'm so pleased it's a turning point for you. We're going to turn that all the way round from now on. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And over to Christine. You ready, Christine?
Ready as I'll ever be.
Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thank you. Hi everyone. Lovely to catch up with everybody. Obviously, I'm Christine Bell-Chambers, more commonly known as Dorset FBM to a lot of you on Twitter. I'm the Finance and Business Manager at Wyvern Academy in Weymouth, and I've been in post well, since September 2018, so just less than the 2 academic years. We're a highly specialised 3 to 19 special school, catering for SLD and PMLD students. So it's become a real sort of a love, a work for the place, to see the community and how things actually sort of affect families and pupils around. Before working there, I'd worked across various levels of school finance in first and middle schools. We have a 3-tier system here in Dorset. And over the last 8 years, I've worked in maintained academies and multi-academy trusts. So a multitude of experience, having previously spent about 25 years in engineering. It was great to be able to find another outlet for sort of project management, essentially, and looking at the finance side. I say, like many others, I've come into this from other careers, and also having to sort of reset my career with having children. Took a huge step backwards when starting from scratch again, having climbed the ladder within previous career, as Suba was saying. So it's hard to start again, right at the bottom as finance assistant, but gradually working way through. What I'd like to talk about today is not so much the multitude of 10% braver moments that I'm starting to realise I've had over the last sort of, however many years, but to look at the last year in particular, this current academic year. Because last October, after a really tough first year and my reintroduction into full-time SBM work after 6 years, I found myself craving the opportunity to connect with a wider professional and geographical circle. It was all too easy to just speak to the other special schools locally and not actually sort of look outward as to what we could be doing as a school, what I could be doing as a leader, and what I might have to offer. As most SBMs will know, knowing that your CPD budget is next to nothing makes life very difficult when it comes to putting yourself first. So I knew that our budget was never going to stretch to conferences and courses, and I've always been quite adept at finding free CPD. And that's when I discovered Twitter, the SBL Twitter, SBM Twitter, various hashtags, after reading several articles in EdExec, and where they'd given the writers' Twitter handles. So I simply followed I started off by following a couple of people, and it grew over a few weeks, quite quickly within October of last year. And after seeing a tweet suggesting a weekend meetup for Southwest SBMs, I sort of tentatively asked, is Dorset considered the Southwest? I mean, to me it was, but I had no idea how it would be perceived by others. And I was immediately welcomed with open arms. It was brilliant. It grew from there. So I went off to meet everyone on the 4th of November. I went to somewhere I'd never been, and I was going to meet the inspiring people that I wanted to emulate. So here's a bit of a shout out to Emma Gray, Helen Burge, Debbie Beezer, Jane Durkin and Debbie Stevens, because on that day alone, you all managed to make me feel completely at home whilst being well and truly outside my comfort zone, recording a podcast in a cafe with people I'd literally only just met. And so it was a huge day. It was a really good turning point just after the half term, and around the same time I also came across some great content from Women Ed, courtesy of Jules Dalby, who's one of the founders. And I've been fortunate to have known Jules for sort of well over 15 years on and off, since we shared a health visitor after having our first child here in Dorchester. But what impressed me so much, I was immediately hooked by the ethos of the Women Ed group and the supportive relationships, the idea that authentic leadership was actually revered and the only way, to truly lead. And having worked in other industries where autocratic leadership was very much the way to go, I was put down a lot. So this was really refreshing. And then over Christmas, Women Ed ran a hashtag Pledge for Change 20 blog challenge. So this gave me an opportunity then to write my first blog and to commit myself to being 10% braver. The blog reflected on the difficult first year that I'd had, which included some huge potential deficits and ESFA interference, assistance, I should say. I also happened to, during that first year, we had a very enlightening visit from an SRMA, who just happens to be Abby, who's going to be following on from me after this. And it made me realise that I did know what I was doing, but sometimes it does take someone from outside to help you realise that. So the blog also helped me to look ahead to this year and what I needed to get out of the experience of a tough time. And putting it in writing really helped me to form a plan in my mind of how I was going to show that I could be or should be on the senior leadership, because at that time I wasn't, going even at the beginning of this year. So by the time the appraisals were carried out in January, I'd gone through all the sections of ISBL professional standards, using the self-assessment tool. And also I'd read almost everything written by someone who I think is actually here tonight, which is Laura Williams. I read everything that she'd written concerning leadership and demonstrating your impact. This just gave me the final push, and I was ready to ask at my appraisal for 3 things. I went in asking for a place on SLT, and at the time this was simply the head teacher, the deputy and the assistant head. They'd been SLT themselves for 5 years, and 2 of them have been there for over 20 years. So it was quite a change for them. I requested some formal qualifications to consider to consolidate the knowledge that I'd gained, and I was also requesting attendance of conferences, wider national conferences. So I'd never considered myself to be particularly brave, but on that day I felt more capable because I'd armed myself with knowledge and other people's opinions, and it just came together. And I felt more capable than at any time in this second career I had done at all. And what's more, the head teacher agreed to all of it. I came out, and as a result of being confident, being braver, I joined the SLT in February, which was fantastic timing considering there's a pandemic being your first challenge. I then signed up for Women Ed cohort on the NCE Masters and actually started my induction last week. I think there's a few others again here tonight. And my ISBL conference is booked for November. And since that appraisal, I've also written 2 articles for EdExec. And Vivian, you'll be pleased to know one of them was on not using apologetic language. And they do remain unpublished because of lockdown. I've done a case study for ISBL about using the professional standards, a second blog about leadership, and I've got 2 more about 10% braver in draft at the moment. So the worlds of SBL Connect and Women Ed have really taught me that it's okay to have something to say, and it's okay to be your authentic self. Why would you try being anything else? As Sarah said, believe you can do things, and being 10% braver just starts to become continuous. So that's what I really want to leave you with tonight, really, is that just trying it once, it evolves, it snowballs. Keep trying, keep going. These things will come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine. I remember that blog when you sent it in. I was like going, yay, this is wonderful, this is fantastic. And that message of be your authentic self, that's exactly what I was meaning earlier by lead as a woman. Yes, don't lead by trying to look like and be like other leaders, men. Sorry, because I know we've got Andy at least in the audience. We don't have to be like those shouty men. We can be ourselves and we can lead. So thank you for that, Christine. And as you said, we're now going to move over to Abby then. Welcome, Abby. And thank you very much for sharing your story with us.
Hi, I'm Abby. Thanks, Christine. I have to say, when I met her, I did not know she was not on leadership. And I had a hard time believing it because I felt she was really competent. She knew what was going on, and she just needed to be listened to. So I'm actually pleased that you went for it because you deserve it. Name's Abby. I started Asher Business Consulting, which is school business consulting. So right now, I do some interim work, added capacity. I do some coaching and mentoring for school business managers. And I do things like internal audit and lots of school support. But before I got to this stage, I was in Nigeria working in a bank. I was actually a money market trader with one of the largest banks there. And then I got married, and my husband decided he wanted to go back to London. I came with him thinking, right, we'll just take everything with us and we will start again. It wasn't that easy. I remember taking my CV to lots and lots of places. I would be told, I mean, in Canary Wharf once, I remember being told by one of the recruitment agencies that, oh, Nigeria, we don't even know if you know how to use a fax machine over there. We don't even know if you know how to use any form of technology. I'm not sure we can give you that. So I did have one thing going for me, which was I was young, and at the time I did not know that you were meant to enjoy your job. So it was part of the course. I signed up with Office Angels then by Liverpool Street, and I was there every single morning before the first person opened the door. I would sit in for the whole day. If they had a call coming saying someone was off sick, I'd be straight in there. Some days there would be no calls coming for, cover work. And they knew me so well at some point. I remember the lady said, please go home. If anything comes up, you'll be the first person we call. And I'm like, well, I need a job. I'm staying right here. Which I sort of thoroughly enjoyed doing. But eventually I sort of got into different jobs in public sector and in the private sector. At some point when I then had my kids, I got a job with Ford Financial. I got a job with a bank. And then my son was diagnosed with autism. And I was told I had to bring him to some sort of playgroup program once a week, every week, at which point I then realized neither of these jobs would work for me. So I took a job in further education, not far from home, so I could do that. Now, while that was going on, the Learning and Skills Council at the time ran out of money, and we were defunded for our capital project. At the time, it was meant to be 100 million. There were about 100 redundancies, so I just took voluntary redundancy because there was so much work we had to do with my son. And at that point, we'd had to sell our house and move to a different local authority. We started renting because we had to pay for therapies for him. It was quite severe. We found a really good outstanding school where we moved into, got him in there. And then I got my first job in academies. That was about 11 or 12 years ago. And that was going really well, but sort of in there, then we had a really small group of academy FDs. We used to meet termly in London. It was a really active FD forum group, and it was quite supportive, which I enjoyed. It made it so much easier to get things done without having to reinvent the wheel. I found that really exciting. And I sort of kept moving from there. Then I got to a stage where I was with another trust. Everything seemed to be going really well. And my son's school placement fell apart again. And they called and they said, look, his behavior is getting really difficult. And the school transport people will no longer take him. You have to start doing the school run. At which point I just thought, oh my God, I can't even hold down this job full time and do that school run. This was about 6-7 years later. I can't do that. So I tried to work part-time. I tried to work from home, and it just wasn't coming together. So it got to a point where, and this job is about 15 minutes of my life every week commuting to go there because of traffic. And I remember thinking, right, what do I do next? My youngest son just turned 10, and I remember on his 10th birthday, my mom said to me, oh, you've got 2 minutes left of his childhood. You're not going to have a lot left to do with him. And I thought, really, right, 15 minutes of the commute, I have to do the school run for this person. It's all falling apart. And my oldest son's behavior had really escalated. I mean, I had a hole in the wall. I had, my au pairs weren't coping. So I just said to myself, you are going to have to make a choice, and there were push factors within the job. Like there was the travel, and then we had a new head who, I had clashed with over a couple of things, especially when he said to me, if you want to continue taking charge, go to your own school and become a headmistress. And that really upset me. And I went, nobody uses the word headmistress anymore. You have to say head teacher. And I just thought, you know what? I don't think 5 years down the line, if I don't focus on my kids, I would feel fulfilled no matter how well I'm doing on the job. I'm in the school. We started from scratch. It was outstanding in all areas. It was amazing. But I just knew deep down inside it wouldn't work if my kids weren't getting that level of commitment from me. I had a lot of fears about leaving. You know, this is a job with a pension scheme. This is a secure job, so to speak. I didn't plan to leave. You know, it wasn't a long-term plan where I had all this money saved. So there were these questions in my mind about, are you sure you can do this? Are you sure you should do this? And it was almost, you know, my mind was racing in different directions about how to make that decision. So I went out of my way to find out who else had sort of taken the leap, what they'd done. I met a couple of people who are quite encouraging. And unlike when I was in banking, I have to say there's one great thing about this sector we're in, and SPLs generally, they're quite supportive. I didn't meet anyone who felt this is competition and they're going to push me away. So that helped. And I thought to myself, there's so many things I'm leaving behind. Am I sure this is going to work out? You could fail. But in the end, I just thought, what's the worst that could happen? The worst that could happen is I might have to downsize the house. The worst that could happen is I might have to look for a job and then I will be employed again. I don't think that's really that bad, you know, to be in that position. And I remember a book I saw a colleague of mine reading many years ago where he used to go, he'd take the cover and go, feel the fear and do it anyway. So I thought, well, I'll feel the fear and I'll do it anyway. And so I handed in my notice. As soon as I did, I spoke to the audit company that was working with the trust, and she said, "Oh yeah, you know, we subcontract. As soon as you leave, we'll have lunch and we'll give you a contract." And around the same time, the SRMA pilot scheme came up, and I joined that. And I just kept keeping. I think the whole idea of not being employed meant that I noticed opportunities more, and I said to myself, "You're going to have to say yes to everything." You know, and when you don't know the answer, you've got a network, you know where to get the answer. And that's what I went for. Like I said, worst case scenario, you will apply for a job, you will get a job, you'll be an SPM. That's not a failure, that's you doing what you need to do. And speaking to one of them who was a great coach, I remember she said to me, the most important word for you is grit, if you are going to do anything on your own and if you're going to push through. So I came away with what I call grit is the word. And I used to actually play it to the song Grease. So, you know, rather than Grease is the word, I used to always think to myself, grit is the word. Every morning, you're going to have to go out and do something different. You're going to have grit. The fact that it might not work out or some things you want to do won't work out is a given. Once you've reconciled yourself to the fact that some things won't work out, then the fact that they don't work out won't matter. You just keep going and find the next thing. And I'm kind of really, really thankful that I took the leap because it was so worthwhile. You know, I homeschooled my son for a term in year 6. We went on lots of school trips to Berlin and everywhere. And now that we're on lockdown, we actually thoroughly enjoy being together in the same house, even though he's a stroppy teenager half the time. So it's been worthwhile. For my older son, once I left, we actually put everything we had into going to tribunal and getting him a 52-week placement in Doncaster. Absolutely loves it. He's thriving now. And I have now been tasked with getting him a modeling contract or something, but it's been completely worthwhile for me stepping out. And one of the things I didn't imagine that would ever happen was that the turnover would actually be a lot more than I was going to get being employed, which came as a surprise to me. And I'm really, really glad I did. And I would encourage people to think, I think being able to go, what's the worst that could happen? And using our knowledge of risk assessments to work with that. You know, what's the worst that could happen? How do I mitigate that? That's done. I can then proceed. That has been, for me, that helped me to be 10% braver. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. What another amazing journey, and showing how you can still achieve something you want to achieve, no matter what the challenges.
Yeah, there's one other thing I forgot to mention. Sorry, is that during this my journey, and one of the things that also scared me was I found out while having my son assessed, I was asked if, you know, there was a hint that you need to be assessed as well. So I got assessed, and it turns out you're on the spectrum as well. So that was another bigger part of my fear, like, you're on the spectrum. You've got everything against you. This is not going to work. everyone's going to hate you. But like I said, I had to focus on what is the worst that could happen? How do I mitigate? Go for it. And I would advise everyone to just go for it. We're all good at risk assessments and knowing how to deal with that. So I'm sure we can do this.
You can, we all can, and we need to start believing it, because unless we believe it, then we're putting the barriers there ourselves. Thank you so much, Abby. Oh, Kezia, I like the 10% braver.
I've rearranged the room while I've been
Brilliantly in the room. Kezia, thank you very much. You're going to give us a head teacher perspective on these issues that are being raised. Over to you.
I'm on my second headship at the moment, and I've been ahead in two very different schools. One was an all-through school, so it had early years arrangements. It's going to be a bit noisy here, I'm afraid. And I'm currently in a very large secondary only school. What I will say is that head teachers don't tend to be terribly fiscally responsible. My husband constantly reminds me that my credit card limit is a limit, not a target, and therefore I need to consider myself very, very carefully. I need my school business manager, leader, to be very diligent and very precise, and I've been very, very lucky in that. The person I work alongside at the moment has helped the academy that I'm currently leading turn a deficit of over £1 million into a surplus of about £250,000 this year, and we've done that in 2.5 years by being very prudent, but because I have listened to her about how to look after the money. I think the most important thing is we have to make sure that we have the right people at the table. And I do think school business managers, school business leaders, you know, I don't mind which term is used, because essentially it's more about your duties and about your influence than it is about a title. If you think you've got it bad, we've got principals, we've got head teachers, we've got heads of schools, we've got executive principals, we've got, you know, it's just bonkers. And then if you start going down a layer, then are you a head of department? Are you a company director? Are you assistant curriculum leader? It's something about schools at the moment means that everybody's choosing their own title for it, and no one seems to have anything that is commensurate and works alongside it. So I totally understand your frustration, and I'm called all sorts of different things during the course of the day, not just by the children, but by people in emails as well when they're trying to get my attention. Ultimately, head teachers have to trust their SBM, their SBL, without a shadow of a doubt. And that can be quite difficult for us because we are not experts in any way, shape or form. I remember at the start of my career, the person in charge of the money was the deputy head or the assistant head, who was closest to being a maths teacher, and therefore they could add up and maybe use an Excel spreadsheet. Things have changed massively. And therefore the skills have widened. There are now accredited courses that will support, and I think the training and the development required for the role has to be a priority, because by making school business leaders more effective and better at their role means that the school can save money. And ultimately, schools aren't run for teachers. I think somebody said that earlier on. It's run for students, and the more money we have to spend on students, the better the outcomes for them will be, whether it is to support additional courses, whether it's to buy more teachers, whether it's teaching assistants, whether it's resources, whatever it is. The more money that we can save, the more income we can generate, and the less sort of ridiculous outgoings that we've got, then the better the outcomes for children. What I'm looking for in a school business leader is somebody that really wants to understand the children. I work with a very inspirational school business leader who had started at the school about 15 years earlier, basically just counting the dinner money. And someone saw her potential, and she was, you know, she became a school business leader without really any formal qualifications, but because she was just bloody brilliant at her job. But she did duties. She went out, she did lunch duties, she did break duties, she wandered around the corridor, she went with people, everybody knew her. And actually that's what we were looking for, because it is very easy, both for a head and a school business leader, to end up sort of trapped in an office behind invoices and policies, whereas what you want is you need somebody that can be seen. the more teachers see school business leaders and school leaders just in general, because a lot of senior leaders hide in their offices, the more you're seen and the more you're understood, the more that teachers and other middle and senior leaders will start to trust you and start to trust your judgment. It's also partly about the vocabulary that you use. You know, when you're talking to your ordinary sort of school teacher, and you're talking about, so I'm being attacked by dogs as well as children at the moment, I do apologise for that. If you're talking about the business case, teachers don't understand what that is, and therefore it's about, you know, using different vocabulary and about having a shared vocabulary with the senior team in order to make sure that's really accessible to as many people as possible. When teachers really realize that your job is to help them save as much money as possible so they can then have more money to spend, they love you a little bit more. And my love for my school business leaders has grown over the years with my growing appreciation that that is something that they absolutely do. Don't be scared of teachers, don't be scared of kids. Everybody makes it up. Senior leaders make it up. We're all just pretending that we know what we're doing. We all just pretend that we sort of we nod and we look like we understand the budget. And I still have to go back to my leader now and just say, I just don't understand what this means. And she goes, right, well, I told you what it was last year. It's like, well, yeah, but I didn't write it down. Does this mean I can basically spend it on whatever I want? And she goes, well, yes, you can. And that's what I want to know. I'm very lucky in the sense that my governors are very well business minded, and they can support and help as well, and they've been very good. I'm sorry, I do have a dog trying to attack me at the moment, so I'm just going to get rid of him because he's really annoying. Right, he's gone now. Right, and I'll speed this up quite quickly. We have to make sure that we're around the table together. If we're making decisions about how to spend millions of pounds, then we have to make sure. I'm always going to remember this webinar because it's the one where I possibly killed a dog live on air. I do apologise for that. And if I go to prison for animal cruelty, that's my fault. Yes, it is. We have to make sure that we are sharing it, because we are spending an awful lot of money. It has to be a shared discussion around the table. The reason the school that I'm working at now went over £1 million in debt is the head teacher just said, well, I want to spend this and I want to do this and I want to employ here and I want to do this, without any understanding of actually what the impact that would be. And they lost their job in the end because, you know, it's you know, that kind of level of irresponsibility is appalling. So we have to do this together. To be a school business leader or a school business manager, I don't feel sort of overly emotional about any of those terms because it's about what you do. I do think you need to be on SLT. No school can cope without having somebody that has a strategic understanding about what the academy wants to do and where it needs to be. But that will also include behaviours that do need you to get out and about and see everything else. We have to work in partnership because the children deserve the very, very best. If anything's been proven over lockdown is that, you know, much is promised, very little is delivered, and we have to be very careful about how we manage those resources. The children that we serve deserve the very, very best. We're going to be fine, but it's the kids out there that need a lot of help and support. So I'm just going to show you this annoying creature. He's lovely, but he's an idiot. So I hope that's you know, given my perspective a little bit. I've nothing but respect for the role that you do. I couldn't do it. You know, there's no way I could do it, even with loads and loads of years of training. I couldn't do it. I can barely sit in a governor's meeting and sort of and understand everything that's been talked about, but I know that I can trust the person that leads on it within the academy, and that's you. So you're saving my life every single day. I'm going to turn my camera off now and my mic and deal with the dog. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kezia. it was lovely to see the black dog, because there's 2 others. We get different ones at different sessions. Fantastic response in the chat about wanting all head teachers to have the same approach as you do. Thank you very much for that. Can I can't. Can everybody else put their video and that on so that we can come together at the end? Can our school business? I'm going for leaders still, because I think it's about, we need to be able to have people thinking that, but it's not the point is the job, but sometimes the language can affect it. Lovely. Have we got anybody else joining us back in the room? I just wanted to finish off by asking everybody, in what ways can you be 10% braver? You saw Kezia's strategically placed book in the corner there. That was our first book, 10% braver. And that is our mantra that underlies everything that WomenEd does. One of the things I picked out of the 4 stories we heard tonight is that actually, once you are more brave, it feels good. You do realize, I think the phrase was that, you know, what's the worst that can happen? You're not dead, but actually, you actually feel proud of yourself. And we've got to build that pride and confidence in ourselves as women leaders in education. So what I'd love you to do as we finish off with the chat, and I'd love to read some of them out, is in what ways are you going to be 10% braver as a result of this conversation tonight? We'd really love to see those. And if you're not doing it there, let's put it out on Twitter. Let's be even more brave. What's your pledge? That's how we finish every WomenEd event. What's your pledge? In what way are you going to be 10% braver? And when we do another webinar between all our school business leaders, that's how we'd start the next one. Tell us, what ways were you 10% braver? And share the stories and share the ability to be confident and to lead as women. Thank you very much, everybody. Hope you've had a chance to, some lovely things coming through on the chat. I'm just going to see if I can pick some of those up. Signing up for the level 7 SIP for qualification, woo. Public speaking. I like this one, Lisa. I was hesitating over applying for the role of CFO in our trust. I feel like I should just go for it now. Yay! See, that's what I miss about a virtual event. I love them, but there's nothing better than the entire audience going, yes, go for it. Lisa, if you are on Twitter, put that on Twitter, because it will encourage other women to understand that they can do that as well. We don't share those stories, and we don't share stories of being 10% braver just to big ourselves up. I mean, I quite like doing that for that reason, but we also do it so that we can support other women to understand that that's what they can do as well. I'd like to say thank you to Hilary for coming up with the suggestion and the idea that we should do this. I think that was only a week and a half ago, so that's phenomenal tonight. Thank you very much to Sarah, Christine, Abby. Sarah, Christine, Abby, Suba, there you go. Everybody's dotted around all over. Thank you so much for your inspiring stories. And we'll save the chat and send it over to you, because you'll love some of the things that people are saying. Get it all out there on Twitter, please, everybody. And if you want to write a blog telling your story, then please do, and we'll publish it. just like we published that blog that got Christine firing on all cylinders. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll put the recording on our YouTube panel. Go forth and be 10% braver. Thank you. Bye-bye.